That feeling when you kidnap someone to essentially torture them into talking, and you kidnap probably the worst person to do so because Emilico is such a bundle of sunshine. When she's starving, she can pretend to eat, which fills her stomach, which then makes her sleepy. Edward, honestly, on one hand, probably looks like he kidnapped the best person, but in reality, he kidnapped the worst. And had I not been told that a lot of this has been branching off into anime original territory, I never would have been able to guess. Like, it honestly felt like it came straight from the manga in terms of how they've been adapting it. I really haven't been iffy with the pacing or anything like that, and I learned about what the author was talking about on Twitter and some other secondhand knowledge from just different people I follow on Twitter. And it's interesting because I guess some of this original content was actually planned but never was implemented into the manga, but also what they're doing supposedly is they're trying to tie off this season in such a way that there aren't too many loose ends, so should there never be a season 2, it's not the most blue balls ending out there, which often anime, if it's adapting something, is generally just a commercial for the source material, so having something that ties up more loose ends than doesn't is actually kind of a breath of fresh air for generally an anime-only person like myself. But it's also apparently being written in a way, because I guess the creator of the manga is involved in this last little stretch here, that I guess they want to actually implement something in the manga eventually that will tie into what the anime did here. So should there ever be a season 2, there's actually a really good way for them to connect it, should Cloverworks or another studio ever want to pursue it. So I think it's a pretty cool way of doing it, and I've seen way more manga readers seemingly okay with this direction than not. I have seen some people worried, of course, but seemingly with the way they're doing it, pretty much comes across to me anyway from what I'm seeing, is that it feels like it's going to be one of those endings that doesn't wrap it all up and say, okay, we're done, we can't do more. More of, we're gonna wrap it up, answer quite a bit, while making a sort of anime original ending that should we never get more, at least it's not the worst thing ever, but should we get more, there is ways to do it, which kind of reminds me of things like Noragami. Season 1 of that had some anime original ending, but then they did Season 2, which was even better, and they were able to branch off just fine, right? So I kind of like that about that. I'm sure it's not going to be for everyone, but as someone who's really not scared of anime original stuff in general, for me, this just kind of feels like a natural continuation, and I mean, the fact that I get Edward kidnapping Emilico and Emilico having to eat air and then passing out from being full, I mean, this is some good content for me anyway. It's kind of fun seeing just how the group was kind of like planning to rescue Emilico. You knew it wasn't going to go overly successful in this episode, but I imagine they would get pretty far in the plan and then episode 13 would be the big finale, and seemingly that's exactly what we're getting with Edward. He's changing his speech with his soot and luring Kate into the most deadly trap probably possible. I kind of have a feeling like the way they're going to end it is like Edward's not going to have the dirt he wants on Kate, and Kate's probably going to maybe explain to Emilico why she knows so much, because that has been probably the biggest question left for anime originals. Why is it that Kate seemingly knows the truth when all these other shadows don't, and the ones who do probably only know when they're higher up on the floor? My gut is saying that maybe she was originally connected to the higher floors in a way. Maybe she got demoted, Edward doesn't know, or did she expose some secrets in the books? Those are kind of like my two thought processes going on right now, but I liked how the Veiled Doll approach was probably the most logical way to do so. But upon that being the most logical way to pursue Edward and try to find Emilico, that's naturally what people would assume would happen if they're trying to look for someone trying to save Emilico. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. On one hand, you naturally can get past the gates and things like that, but on the flip side, people know that, you know, she's not going to have a cart because she can't get it to the second and third floor, this and that. So there's still like that threat without it being like completely impossible. You just have to be a more Splinter Cell approach rather than just guns a-blazing. To me, this was just like the natural episode 12. This being a 13 episode show, you knew we weren't going to get the final goodbye, the final hurrah, but we also knew we were going to majorly progress towards it. It's nice seeing different characters, you know, how they're responding to Edward being in control of the kind of like lower dolls and things like that. And the fact that some, even though they naturally, you know, Barbara, right? I mean, she's always been someone who's followed the chain of command. She seems like the person who doesn't push back, but even she seems grumpy about Edward being in charge. As, you know, they're searching for the ruckus that was coming from our boy's room here. So it's nice to just watch all that kind of occur and just kind of build up. Naturally, it was a very dark episode for me. If you've ever watched my videos, I've talked about it before in different dark series. The fact that, like, the way my eyes are, it's kind of hard to focus in on darkly lit scenes. So it was something that I had to up the brightness on my screen, so it kind of distorted the colors. But I mean, in terms of atmosphere, they definitely handled it really, really well. I mean, just the idea of veiled dolls are so cool, especially when Kate got into that one room where she like was looking at the teacups and things like that. I just think there's such an attention to detail in this mansion that I kind of wish there was like a VR like arcade room or something where you could put on an Oculus Rift or you could put on something and just explore it. Because the amount of detail to this reminds me of just like those medieval castles and things like that you can explore on certain places, right? There's such an attention to detail with this almost Victorian era gothic horror aesthetic that just really intrigues me. I mean, I have no right to be as interested in the cabinets that hold teacups and water jugs or horrible grandfather soot coffee, but it really is that attention to detail that I think Cloverworks does a great job with the background details and just environmental things, because really when you look at Shadow's house, does it really feel like things are just placed there as a filler object? No, it feels like it's placed there to enhance the scene and make it feel like these characters, from the way they're dressed, the way they act, the general chemistry between them, this is how it should be. From the living doll's rooms, which is like a prison cell, to the more like higher upper class lifestyle of the actual creatures that are mimicking humans and things like that. It just feels like there's so much attention, and I kind of wish I had an entire episode that had no characters but just like went from room to room. I think that'd be really cool as like a bonus feature on an anime disc, which isn't gonna happen, but a man can dream, right? I just really love Shadow's House. I definitely think it's one of the more original series of this year. Sure, it's adapted from a manga, but what I mean by original is like, I don't really feel myself comparing it to other series. Like, there's aspects about Shadow's House for sure, but the overall, like, way the mystery and the creatures that, you know, these little fairy things that, you know, them mimic the bodies and then they take over, they wipe their brains, everything about it feels so different than what I typically see. Not just from, like, anime, manga, light novels, but just stories in general. Like, you can pick apart and say, this reminds me of this or that or this or that, but combined in the execution, I mean, Shadow's House really is, I think, going to be a great example that different manga authors and things like that will probably eventually take influence of. Even if Shadow's House never becomes the biggest mainstream show or manga out there, I definitely think it's going to influence a lot more than I think many people are probably going to realize, and 5 to 10 years from now, I'm not going to be shocked if I'm still comparing shows to Shadow's House, like, wow, this really gives me a Shadow's House feel, given how they're handling the mystery surrounding the duo pair here and this and that. I mean, this episode, for being like the second to last episode, was it too explosive? No, it was definitely like the setup to the finale, but with all the attention to detail, the humor, the horror, I mean, seeing Edward's soot powers, which, I mean, was really cool, I have to say. I love the kidnapping angle. I love what they're kind of like building up in a way to like leave us off without completely blue ballsing us, while still having room for more season 2. So should people want to pursue the manga's there, which I've heard nothing but good things. And should, you know, a studio, either Cloverworks who's doing this or a different one, want to pursue a season 2, seemingly between the manga author and just everything involved, I mean, there's plenty of ways to continue more just by doing different things. And honestly, whatever they do, I'll be right there watching or reading depending on what happens. I mean, right now I feel very satisfied with the anime. We'll see what I feel with episode 13, and you know, should I really get a craving, I'll probably check out the manga. If not, I'll probably just wait to see if they'll do more. But I mean, right now, I'm feeling pretty satisfied. There's still a lot to explore, but it's not that complete, oh my god, go read the manga ending. It's more of a, oh, there's still many questions and more mystery, but at least it doesn't feel like something you watch simply to go say, oh, you need to read more to fully appreciate it, right? Let me know your thoughts and feelings on this week's Shadow's House episode, and what do you hope to see with episode 13, the last episode maybe ever, or for just season 1. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, show your support, and hit that subscribe button if you're happy and new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.